Hello, my name is Ben Tarcson, and I'm the gallery manager at the Greenville Center for Creative Arts. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Dr. Meghan Kirkwood, who has her solo exhibit in the main gallery entitled Production Landscape. Dr. Meghan Kirkwood earned a BFA from the Rhode Island School of Design and Photography before completing her MFA in studio art at Tulane University, a PA and PhD at the University of Florida. She currently works as the assistant professor of visual arts at the Sam Fox School of Visual Arts and Design at Washington University in St. Louis, where she serves as the area head in photography. Welcome, Meghan.
Thank you.
So today I wanted to ask you and kind of learn more about production landscape. So could you elaborate on the concept behind your work in the gallery?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe it would be helpful for me to talk a little bit about the history of the series or kind of how it got started. So basically, I started to get really interested in the Dakota Access Pipeline because I was living in North Dakota or close to North Dakota in 2016 when I became familiar with the protests from the Standing Rock Nation about the construction of this pipeline. And I was also really, I was doing a lot of photographing in the Bakken oil region of North Dakota, which was creating so much oil that generated the need for this massive pipeline. And I just became really interested in these huge things that were happening in the state, how they were connected, and then, sort of everything that was going on in the background of this story, right? So by the time that the Standing Rock protests had happened, almost all of the pipeline had been constructed. And I remember thinking, how is it that something that so big just kind of happened without a whole lot of, media attention, for lack of a better word, before these protests happen. And so I just started thinking a lot about how big this pipeline was and just how many places it also touched, right? So we knew a lot about that one conflict, but it certainly wasn't the only one. And so I really started to think about, again, what were all these other places? What were the other states that it was going through? And what did it look like for something this big to be put in the ground? We think of the Midwestern states as, being very divided up on the grid system. And here was this huge diagonal line that was just kind of, slashed through 4 states. And so, so I just kind of said, I wanted to see what that looks like at the landscape level. And I wanted to think about what its impacts were on communities, that were living very close to it. And I should say too, I'm not, as a visual artist, and as a person, I'm not someone who started this project with an editorial concept in mind. I really just wanted to ask the question of what did this look like to put something this big into the ground, and what has its effects been as it's moved along. I'm not necessarily anti-pipeline, and lots of the people that I met along the way also weren't, but they also still had felt an impact from its construction. And I think it's I also, I drove along this pipeline fueled by gas. So there's a lot of, circular aspects to this work, but in making this work and in eventually putting this series together, I really wanted to think about this idea of a massive project viewed from the landscape scale, both in a very intimate way from somebody's home, right, area, and also from a scale that would let us think about its complexity.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you say that about the scale, and I'm sure that may have been difficult to think about how you're going to present it, but as it sits in a gallery, it's expansive. It's over 100 pieces in total, and I can maybe share a few photos here so that everyone can see it. As I've said before, there are a lot of pieces in your solo show, and I'm sure that these aren't all of them. So can you kind of guide me through the process that you have of editorializing and picking which are the best of the bunch that you take throughout this time?
Sure, yeah. I mean, because I was kind of going through so many places, like I kind of had a bit of I don't want to say a routine, but like a set of things that I would like kind of immediately start to photograph, right? Because it was just sort of me getting acquainted with the space. Like, so there's a lot of markers for the pipeline. And like, you know, there are places where, you know, they're really rural where you'll be driving and just kind of tracking it. And it's just kind of fence. And then you come to like that marker with the white post and the yellow top, right? Or a gate that's red with stripes, you know? So, and all of a sudden you see this like sign that just kind of communicates to you out from the landscape. Like, oh, it's here, you know, if you're looking for it. And I edited a lot of those pictures out because, you know, it's like I kind of took a lot of the same shots, right? Just because again, it was sort of me saying like, okay, I found this place and now I'm kind of, or yeah, I'm just kind of connecting myself to what I see. So that was one part of it. I also tried to edit out stuff that was I don't know, maybe repetitive. Like there's a lot of continuity within the series, but I did really want to kind of bring out like I wanted to bring out nuances. Yeah. So I mean the grid that you're showing here with all of the aerial shots, like a lot of them are kind of similar in terms of their palette, in terms of where I placed the horizon line, in terms of the lighting. But in that instance, I did like those equivalencies were meaningful because I wanted you to be able to make comparisons about the things that were different, right? So as to like kind of the placement of the shadow or how it kind of either stood out more or less from its neighbor. So in that instance, like in this particular grid, that those kinds of similarities were part of what I tried to work with. So you know, it's like I didn't, it's sort of a topology without really being a topology. So that was something I was thinking about. But, you know, I mean, other things I thought about was I did want to have some balance between the different states. You know, again, you don't necessarily know that looking at it as a viewer, but I didn't want it to all be kind of from, you know, one time or one place, but to have some kind of nuance to it.
Examples. What were you seeing specifically in some of those states that maybe surprised you or took you back in maybe a positive or a negative way?
Yeah, I mean, well, the biggest thing, and I know this, you know, this was a big part of the work at the exhibition, was what you could still see 4 years after it was constructed. So a lot of the images in the gallery are aerial images, and so I would, you know, I would be flying a drone, and I was able to see the shadow of this pipeline construction across a field, across a crop. And I didn't think you would see something like that was constructed in 2016 in 2020. Like you sort of, I mean, I have this mentality about a lot of big construction or infrastructure things that like things get done and then they're sort of done, right? And this made me think a lot about kind of the aftermath and what that might mean. Also, you know, just like at a biological level, you know, that like in creating this shadow, like the plants were different, you know, which means the soil was different, which means that things were disrupted and they're, you know, and maybe not necessarily like bad, you know, but they aren't the same, right? So that was something that really surprised me. And I think, yeah, I mean, other things that really surprised me were just like, I mean, it was really interesting talking to people, you know, so I mean, it was a landscape project. I didn't do portraits as part of this project, but I did talk to a lot of people about the work. And I think that it's something that was interesting to me is how people thought about the pipeline in relationship to what else was happening on the land. So, you know, for the most part, people I was talking to were farmers or ranchers who had, you know, had the pipeline go across their property. And, you know, a lot of them, you know, weren't necessarily like the idea that something like that would be constructed across their land wasn't maybe offensive or wasn't really something they had an issue with, right? They might have had an issue with like how dirt was put back in, right? Or, you know, something kind of with it. But I think that a lot of people had a view of land that was, you know, that land is making things for us, right? And that we tend the land and we're tending it for the purposes of getting things from it, right? And drawing sustenance from it.
Is there anything else that you felt like you wanted to touch on before we head out?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one thing I would just is I'm really excited to share this work in Greenville. You know, I think it's it's a place that maybe a lot of people who live there haven't had a chance to go to, to North Dakota or see the central US. And I think it's really great to have the opportunity to share kind of the story of this place in this like kind of strange journey through 4 states. And it would be interesting. I wish I could be there to talk to visitors to the gallery and kind of hear what some of those first impressions are, and what are the things that that are being seen that maybe I haven't even thought about. That's one of the really great parts about kind of doing a big project like this, is being able to have like your views challenged and expanded by people who bring a really different experience to it. So yeah, I'm really grateful that this work gets to be there.
Well, if you want, since this work will be on display through March 23rd, which is a Wednesday, towards the end of March here, if you wanted to, Megan, you can plug your email or maybe even your website, and anyone who sees this video can potentially reach out to you with any questions that they might have.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a contact form on my website. So yeah, that would be great. I would love to hear from people. Like, any and all thoughts is really useful for me, because
thank you, Megan. Thank you for chatting with me today. I'm glad that I got to hear more and learn more about the experience. It's definitely enlightening. And
no, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about the show. I appreciate it.
Of course. Well, again, I want to reiterate that the show is on display through Wednesday, March 23rd. So feel free to come by. We will be open Tuesdays through Fridays, 9 to 5, and Saturdays, 11 to 3. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.